Hi, we're going to read the first chapter of Little Rhino, My New Team, together, and I'm hoping that you will follow along with me. So chapter 1 is called 3 Seconds, and we're going to be introduced to the characters, Rhino and his grandpa, and some other people in his life. Little Rhino stepped up to home plate. He gripped the bat tight. The breeze in the treetops sounded like the crowd at a Major League Baseball game. He imagined that the bases were loaded. "Hit this one out of the park," he told himself. Rhino glared at the pitcher. Here came the ball. With a hard, steady swing, Rhino connected. The smack of the bat against the ball sent a thrill through his body. "Nice hit," said Grandpa James with a smile. Rhino smiled back. He dropped the plastic bat and watched as the ball flew over the tall hedge. He'd hit it out of the backyard. Rhino had never hit one that far before. Grandpa pitched to Rhino every day after Rhino's homework was done. Books first, baseball second was the rule in their house. Rhino always raced home from 3rd grade, had a snack, and did his work. Then he changed into shorts and an oversized jersey, grabbed his bat and glove, and met Grandpa in the yard. "You're really hitting them now, Rhino," Grandpa said. Rhino's real name was Ryan, but everyone except his teachers used his nickname. "Better get that ball before it rolls all the way to Main Street." Rhino laughed. He knew the ball hadn't gone that far. It was just a plastic one, not like the real MLB baseball they used for playing catch. He hit with a plastic one because a real one might break a window. That would be bad. Rhino trotted out of the yard. He stopped cold when he saw Dylan on the other side of the street. Dylan was tall and thin and always looked mean. He was holding Rhino's ball. "Looking for this?" Dylan said with a sneer. "Come and get it, wimp." Rhino gulped. Dylan was the meanest kid in 3rd grade. He teased everyone and often got into fights. "Dylan acts tough, but he's not," Rhino's thinker said. Grandpa James would always point to his head and say, "Your thinker is there to think the things you can't say out loud." Still, Dylan was bigger than Rhino. He was always sneering, his glasses sitting crooked on his face, and his stiff blonde hair stood up on his head, making him look even taller. "Come on over," Dylan said. "Come get your baby ball." Rhino looked back. The leafy hedge blocked Grandpa's view. Rhino couldn't return to the backyard without the ball. He swallowed hard and walked across the street. Rhino reached for the ball. Dylan held out his hand, then pulled it away. Rhino reached again. Dylan twisted and waved the ball over his head. "Give me the ball," Rhino said. Inside his head, his thinker added, "You big bully." Dylan held the ball out again. "Take it," he said. Rhino put his hand on the ball. Dylan wouldn't let go. "Let me have it," Rhino said. "This is why you have 0 friends," Dylan thought. "Dylan," he thought, "you're nothing but a big-mouthed bully." "Just take it," Dylan said, but he gripped the ball harder. Rhino frowned and squinted his brown eyes. He pulled the ball, but Dylan just laughed. He was stronger than Rhino. Rhino heard Grandpa's voice from the yard. "Rhino," he said, "is everything all right?" Dylan looked surprised when he heard Rhino's grandfather. He yanked the ball away, then threw it at Rhino. It hit Rhino's chest and fell to the street. Rhino scooped it up. Dylan was walking away fast. Rhino had never seen Dylan back down from something before. He didn't look back. Rhino stepped into the yard. Grandpa James had come closer to the hedge. He raised his bushy eyebrows, but he didn't say anything. Rhino felt shaky. He didn't like uncomfortable situations. If Grandpa hadn't been there, Dylan might have started a fight. Or he might have kept the ball. "Ready to hit some more?" Grandpa said. He gripped an imaginary bat, flexing his arm muscles and making a powerful swing. Grandpa had always been very fit and athletic. Rhino slowly walked back over to Grandpa. "I think I've had enough for today," he said softly. "Really?" Grandpa asked. "You usually want to hit until it gets dark out." Rhino shrugged. I guess I'm tired. He felt embarrassed because Dylan had picked on him, and Rhino didn't really get a chance to stand up for himself. He had let his thinker do all of his arguing, and then his grandfather showed up. Grandpa James probably heard the whole thing. Grandpa put his hand on Rhino's shoulder. 3 seconds, he said. Grandpa had taught Rhino the 3-second rule. When you're angry or feeling bad about yourself, take 3 seconds to be upset. Then remember how great you are. Rhino let his shoulders drop. He blew out his breath. Let's do some throwing, Grandpa said. He picked up a hard ball and watched Rhino grab his glove off the lawn. Sounds good, Rhino said. After a few throws, he felt better. Grandpa tossed the ball high in the air. Pop flies like those were the hardest ones for Rhino to catch. The daylight was fading. Ryan set himself under the ball and watched as it reached its highest point. The ball seemed to hang in midair for a second. Then it dropped. Rhino made the catch. Nice one, Grandpa said. Last month, when they'd started practicing baseball, Rhino almost never caught a pop fly. Now he grabbed them every time. You've made a lot of progress, Grandpa said. Everything takes time and practice. Catching pop-ups, hitting the ball. Rhino nodded. Then he remembered the clash with Dylan. He stared toward the hedge and replayed the conflict. I should have told him to get lost, he said. He thought. Everything takes time, little Rhino, Grandpa said again, even dealing with a bully. Okay, that's it for chapter 1. So think about what you're reading. Think about any connections you have or questions or inferences you have. And you can maybe write those down as you get ready to read chapter 2.